So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hi, well, I'm Sawyer Rose. I'm an artist. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been working on a project for about like the past 8 years called the Carrying Stones Project. And it's about trying to take women's labor issues, kind of like the invisible work that women do, and try to make it visible, try to make it like into something that people can see and feel and understand and hear the stories of these amazing women that I talk to.
And just thank you so much for being with me at this time. And I mean, we already did a little bit of introductions out of the way, but I guess just to start, just for the viewers or listeners to just know, can you tell me a little bit about sort of the Carrying Stones project?
Yeah, so the Carrying Stones project. It's been going on for quite a while now. What I do is well, I became really interested in women's invisible labor, especially like the unpaid labor that women do. So like you're talking about like your cooking, cleaning, childcare, elder care, like those are the obvious ones, but also volunteerism is kind of caretaking of the community and also mental labor, emotional labor. So there's like a lot of things in the pot there simmering. So I'm kind of a research nerd and I started digging into all this data and on like women's working lives. And it was so interesting to me, but it was kind of inaccessible. It's kind of boring. It's kind of dry. So I was like, as an artist, what can I do to translate this really interesting information that I found into like something palatable that people can like get interested in or like get excited about like hearing more about the topic. So that's how I started Carrying Stones. And what I do is I get women participants or like women or non-binary participants who have interesting work lives and interesting work stories, but who also sort of embody a topic I want to talk about, like women in academia or like women in entrepreneurship, whatever. Um, and I get them to give me their work data for maybe like 3 weeks, a month. I do a little data analysis on it, and then I turn it into a data visualization sculpture that like actually records the data that they gave me. And then the really cool part, I think, is once I'm done making this sculpture that's like this modular thing of their hours, I take the sculpture back to the woman who gave me the data and I take a photographic portrait of her, like lifting and carrying the physical representation of her work labor. So, yeah, so that's the project.
How I first sort of got introduced to this project was through the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts. And I remember just hearing about it one day and I was just sort of off. I was like, you know what? I should just go. I should just go take a stroll. And I remember one of the things that really amazed me about the work was just sort of besides sort of usually the other exhibits that sometimes I go to every now and then, usually either paintings, where it's okay, walk in and I sort of try to interpret what the artist's intent were, or walk away with my own interpretation of it, or maybe pictures of historical moments throughout time. This one was very much of a an educational experience for me, but in a different way of just I remember at times I was just sitting there there was one point where I pulled out my phone and started counting the gaps or counting the gold and the silver moments. And then after a while I was like, I can't do this with every single sculpture, just counting down. But and still one of the things that I noticed that was the common thread throughout them all was just sort of the little gaps. There just weren't many gaps between with all sort of the systems. So I guess my question is just sort of one of the things I would just want to know a bit was sort of what was that process like for you in sort of building this project and sort of your own insights that you've had.
Sure. Well, so you're talking about the gold and the silver and the spaces. So let me explain that real quick. It's like you already know because you saw the show, but so in most of my pieces, it's a matrix, right? So And in a lot of the pieces, there's this visual language where it's like one object that is gold represents an hour of paid labor. One object that's silver represents an hour of unpaid labor. And then any spaces in the matrix are an hour where that woman was not working. Right, but it's like what you have to remember is not working is like everything else in your entire life. So it's like taking a shower, it's getting your exercise, it's like I hope you're seeing your friends, but like it's also going to the dentist, right? So like your whole rest of your life has to fit into that area. So it's like pretty profound when you see how, like you said, how few spaces there are in these women's data. Um, so. Yeah, so I'm sorry, you asked me. I explained all that and I forgot what you asked me.
My questions just were like in building sort of your project, what was your sort of personal insights and or insights that you found throughout the process?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that every single woman who has collected data for me has gone, I had no idea what I do with my time until I really sat down and thought about it and like had to sketch it out. And I even do, the first piece I did in this was actually like aggregate data. Well, it's not exactly aggregate data. It was a conglomeration of different women's data, 47 women. And most of them who only kind of did it casually came back and said, I had no idea what I was doing. And I do an interactive that I'm actually going to be doing in January at the museum that just has people like ballpark their data on a little like iPad kiosk, and then maybe they spend like 3 minutes thinking about it, and it gets the same reaction. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't realize how much unpaid labor I was doing. Um, and so I guess for me, the experience has been just I'm super glad to be able to connect people to that information about themselves. I'm super glad to be able to start conversations, especially, like between like the subject and their partner is often a very interesting one when we look at like how much unpaid labor is in like their home system. And for myself, I mean, I was the first person I started looking at. I started the project when I had a toddler and an infant at home, and I was a graphic designer and I had my art practice. And I was like, this isn't sustainable. Like, this is way too much. And if this, like, I have advantages, right? It's like we have a home, my children are healthy, I have a good partner, all those things. It's like if I didn't have those things, how unsustainable would that be then? So that's when I started looking at like different data sets, different demographics, and was like, this is a huge systemic problem that's like that needs to be talked about. So those are my revelations, for better or for worse.
When you're discussing about the unpaid hours, I remember watching an interview where Lauren, one of your subjects of like for the academia piece, was there, and she was sort of talking about how sort of had to sort of when discovering this, when looking at hours, it was about trying to pace herself as well and trying to like dictate like, okay, this time is for this and this time is for that. And that was sort of had a personal insight with me as well, because I remember just like just like the idea of like when you're not working, it kind of feels sort of shameful of just like, oh, you're supposed to be doing something right
You
now.
could be
You're supposed to
doing
be
more and more
yes.
and more. Yeah.
I like that association of just like constant, like you have to be on the rise, you have to be progressing. Each year has to be get better and better and better. And I guess, I mean, I know you discussed a little bit about it, but I guess if you just want to like mention again or just have any new insights on that, what is something that you sort of had like you did you have some similar experience like Lauren where you had to realize like, oh, the importance of balance or
Yeah,
trying to find balance
absolutely.
in this system?
So Lauren, yeah, I remember Lauren telling me there was like, so she's a professor, right? She's a history professor. She's grading papers, and she would lie down on the couch to watch a movie after a very, very long day. And she would feel like she needed to pick up her papers and grade while watching because it wasn't enough to, like, it was never enough. It's like to have some time for herself. It's like, nope, nope, I got to be doing something. And I think that a lot of women feel that. I think everybody in our society feels that is like, this grind society where you're like, if you're not grinding all the time, this like, you could be doing more. Um, And then, then I do think that there's kind of like this social backlash to that, where it's like the whole self-care thing. But you can like take that too far too. So, I'm probably not the best example of finding that work-life balance. I do tend to be a grinder myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have all these crazy big sculptures made. Um, but I I guess my insight into it after doing all this work and studying all this is that you really have to be honest with yourself about how much you're doing. You have to be honest with yourself about how much you're volunteering for without getting paid. You have to be able to say no. I know it's a really hard thing for a lot of people. But, what I see with a lot of the women in my study is that they're super volunteers and people know they're competent and then go, "Oh, you know what? She'll do it." And then you end up doing it. And then next time they go, well, she did it last time. So just get her to do it again. And it becomes a cycle. And eventually you have to set a boundary. Again, it's like, it's a skill that lots of us aren't great at. But I think putting these things out in the open, talking about them in sort of like a sociological, non-confrontational way, just like, hey, take a look what you're doing, take a look what your spouse is doing, is helpful.
And throughout this process, how, like, when you were mentioning like being honest with yourself, I can imagine that sort of that unfiltered picture of yourself can sometimes like really take effect and really could have like very sort of like emotional highs or lows. And I guess sort of in seeing this process going, how has it been like witnessing sort of everyone sort of like really come face to face with themselves in that way?
Yeah, you're right. It like I've had everything from like one participant cried and was like, and I mean, it was beautiful. She was like, I feel like this is the first time I've ever been seen and appreciated for what I do, and oh my God, but it was, sad in the end that it had taken that long and it took my weird project to like put it to the fore. A lot of people are just like, holy crap, like surprised, dumbfounded. I gotta process this. I didn't realize this is how I was spending my time. And yeah, and then, you've got your people that are like, ha, told you so, which I love. I love that too. So from some people it's very empowering. Some people it's befuddling. Yeah, there's no right answer. It's just, giving the people some facts. And like I was saying, it's not just facts for the women that are participating in the project. It's facts for everybody. It's like, what is your mother, your sister, if your spouse is a woman or a man? I mean, it's for everybody. It's not just women. I study women because unpaid labor disproportionately falls to women, but that's overall, that's not person by person. There's definitely men out there who are doing piles of unpaid labor that need to have that recognized. So yeah, I'm just hoping to spark a conversation. To do this, it's activist art, but to do activist art in a way that's non-confrontational, that like draws you in and kind of like you're learning something before you know it. And then all of a sudden I've taught you something.
You mentioned something a couple statements back about like sort of like how you that sort of grind mindset and that constant need to work and how you also have that within you. And part of me wanted to ask, where do you think sort of that need to work comes from for you?
Ah, deep question. I have always been a little worker bee, for sure. I like to get my gold star. It's something that my husband laughs. He's like, "Do you need your gold star?" I'm like, "I do." I know that about myself at this age. Um, so yeah, I mean, without getting like too far into it, it's definitely from like my family situation, like never feeling like enough is enough. So, you grow up with that and it sticks with you. It forms who you are. But knowing that about myself, I have tried to take it and turn it to a positive. Letting it, letting enough be enough sometimes. Not perfect at it. So yeah, and then on the positive side, it's like when you see the results of your efforts, like in this project, I've been doing it for all these years and it's like having, really positive outcome for people in their lives and their relationships. People are learning things, you know, everybody loves having worked. It's the doing of the work that's difficult, but loving how it's turned out is what keeps me grinding on this one.
I think I share sort of a little bit of the same sentiment as that of just like that constant need of like improve, do better. There's always room to improve. There's nothing that's really like enough because I'm a bit of an actor and sometimes like after a show or performance, I'll just be sitting there like, oh, I could have done this scene better. I could have done that better. And maybe the audience member, member or director be like, oh my God, you did so great. And it's like, yeah, but oh
Yay.
man, could I perform that better? Did Shakespeare really meant that? Like so
Low bar you got set there. Wow.
it
So how
was
would the Bard feel about my performance? Okay.
it's like
Yeah,
I don't know. Did
easy,
William meant
easy.
that? It's like but I remember just like walking out of like one time like a performing Macbeth and I walked out, I was like, oh man, that was okay. And someone was like, I think he was like a professor or something. He was just definitely was like this older gentleman who was like just seemed very like carry himself well. He was like, no, thank you. And I'm just sitting there just like,
Uh,
all right, all right.
right, maybe for today it's enough.
Yeah, and
Maybe for
I
this
guess
5 minutes I've done good.
yeah. And there was also just like in this other project where it's like it had to become an educational moment of like sort of like had to be a representation of like some of an educational for like a sort of like we have to like represent like an actual tragedy or whatever so like other people can like learn and such. And I'm just walking out there, it's like I don't know if I really captured that moment well. I don't know if I was really responding well. And but then everyone was like, "Oh my God, we learned so much." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay." I feel like for me, I kind of had to learn that as long as they got what they need, that's the goal. I guess sometimes I make it so much about me of just like I have to be good. I have to do this. When it's like sometimes I guess just going off the top of my head of just like it's not so much about being good, but it's more about reaching the objective. Like, did they get what they need? Did the audience learn what they need to learn? And yeah, I guess that's sort of like part of me was like stepping outside of myself.
Yeah, and it makes you so much less like
But
nervous or amped up when you're thinking more about like eyes on the prize. What am I supposed to be doing here? Rather than like, are they looking at me funny? Is the best public speaking advice I was ever given. It's like just keep your mind on what you're trying to convey. What do you do? You're here to serve these people. Like if you're speaking or what, because I do a bunch of speaking. It's like you won't be nervous if you're so busy trying to convey what you're there to do. And it helped me a lot.
and you also mentioned something where it's like stepping outside, like the exhibit wins, like stepping outside, like partner relationships, is like also how you look at your mom and such as well. Again, I was I guess a little opener of just like raised by sort of a single mother. And I remember just I've had this constant revelation like as I got older of stuff of just like really looking at my mom and just like realizing just sort of like, oh wow, she how much she have perhaps sacrificed for me or how much she has like done. And I'm looking at the hours and now looking back, it's like, oh, like I'm just like sort of like I'm an adult now, but now like imagine back when I was like 5, just like the amount of like hours you probably like had to sacrifice or like how much I probably like annoyed her.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much love there in that. The juggling all the balls and like twirling the plates on sticks. Like, as a single mom, yeah, my mom was a single mom too. Um, just yeah, how, you don't realize as a kid how much effort goes into planning that all out. There were three of us. It's, all born in 3 years and 2 months. It must have been chaos. Um, But as a kid, you just kind of bounce along.
But another thing you mentioned as well is like the activist art. And I mean, I really enjoy like I remember before of talking with a different artist about how like art all art is active, like sort of activism. And I was just I guess I'm curious about what is your like mindset about that, about like does that sort of sway like how you pursue art as well? Like I guess how do you go about art? That's the
How
question.
do I go about art? Okay, well, yeah, I do have like a very particular flavor, and I think like it's an interesting connection to what we were saying before about like always needing to be a little bit more. I've always really liked my art to be useful, which is like a whole nother layer on top of it being like aesthetic or pleasing or whatever, or making a statement. It's like I need it to be useful to somebody in a weird way before I feel like, or before I felt, I would say I'm like over this at this juncture of my career. But back in the day, before I felt like it was okay to be spending my time as an artist. It's like, yeah, but I'm providing this service. So it's like, it's okay to have this as a profession. Um, like I said, I've grown past that, thank goodness, but I still do like useful art. So, the first work that I started doing that had any sort of like activist or like social social feel to it was about native plants in California that are going extinct. So I did this whole series of these sort of like glass and metal, because that's back when I was like a gallery artist and I was doing like stuff for sale, which, obviously now I'm making these giant installation things. But back when I was a gallery artist, so I was like, did this whole thing, and it was like part of the proceeds went to protect the plants that I was doing. He was like, he educated you about like this plant only grows in California and it's dying out because of this, and here's what we can do to save it. So it was the same kind of thing where it was like, I kind of like, it's always like flies to honey. Like, I make the piece aesthetically pleasing because I like that, but also it draws people in. And then it's like, I draw you in and you start reading about it and you're like, oh, there's this whole backstory about, this plant or this woman's work or whatever. Um, and yeah, so that's how I approach art making. And um, it comes both from a place of, feeling these are really important topics to be talking about and just wanting to teach somebody something
Which,
that got me interested.
which I believe you definitely did with this project. It was definitely like I think that's why I loved it so much. It's just like, oh wow, it's so like engaging. Like I felt like I was given a problem and just throughout it, I'm just like trying to solve it. I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna look at this one and see like how many hours they got. Or then I'm gonna read a bio about them and see how it applies to here. Oh, okay, the gold and silver man. Okay, how many golds is there? Okay, now how many silvers now? Now compare that. Like it's just a lot
Yeah.
of
And
this.
then once you get the gold and silver thing, you're like, oh, wait, no, I know the language now. I can read this one. Yeah.
Yeah, and then after a while, it was like I didn't necessarily have to like read like, oh, gold and silver. It's like, okay, I get the rhythm now. It's just now you just look at each one,
But then
which
sometimes I throw you a change up. Sometimes it's like solid versus invisible. Sometimes, keep it
yeah,
lively.
oh yeah, and I love it. And now the next question is like, why did you implement data into sort of your work? Because I don't see that a lot as well. Or usually the most of the data is mainly like, okay, you look at the bio and it tells you the percentages, and that's really it.
Um, yeah, so data was kind of like the way that I got started in the project. So, like I said, I started the project when my kids were 3 and infant, and I was thinking through how this is not sustainable. This must be a systemic problem because I have advantages other people don't, like, but they're doing the same kind of stuff. So like I said, I'm a big research nerd. Like I can't help myself. I have to Google. So I started Googling like time use surveys, like how much work are women doing? Are they doing, it feels to me like this, women are doing a disproportionate amount of the volunteering in my community, and that kind of thing. So I started looking it up and I was like, yeah. And way, way back then, um, I felt like my husband didn't understand what I was going on about because I was like, "Hey, I learned another thing." And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 whatever." Um, and so finally I saw the statistic that said, women's unpaid labor globally, if you took women's unpaid labor and put it into the global GDP, it would be 25% of the labor done on this planet. And I was like, okay, babe, check this one out. Like, how about this statistic? And he goes, oh, okay, yeah, that is extremely significant. I get it. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, maybe I've got something here. What else can I find? What else can I find to like, he'd never thought of, I'd never thought about it up until, I started Googling. He'd never thought about it, but I was able to give him a data point that made him see what I was talking about. And I was like, I want more. So I immediately started finding more data, telling it to people, seeing if it got a reaction. And yeah, and the project rolled out from there because, in the end, I'm always an artist. So I took the bee in my bonnet and turned it into art.
What I there was one part. I mean, you were very much like showing a spotlight about the disproportion, like the amount of work like our women are getting, and just sort of just like mixed with the work and unpaid work and such. But I think there was also like I think there was for me there was a shift that I felt very inspired because like um I think her name was, I believe it was Amira. She was like wearing like tons of hats. She was like a podcaster. She did activist works. She did nonprofits. And then there was America, who was like a stunt woman, film director, voice actor, and just that wearing so many hats, yet striving, or at least like still going. That
Yeah.
kind of like oddly like walked away with like kind of inspiration of like, oh wow, well if these guys if these
Yeah, look
women
at
can
these
do it,
badasses. If they can do
yeah.
it, heck yeah. Like I can do it too. I do. I am so inspired by the stories of the women that I get to profile. And the way I don't know all these women. Some of them I do before they're in the project, but a lot of them are referred to me by people who are like, I know this ultimate badass. Like you have to do her story. And like I said, I like to, it's sort of like I know this woman with this great story, but it's got to pair up to something that I want to talk about, but also the topics. Like I've had people approach me and been like, "Have you ever thought about like, women with incarcerated partners or family members?" And I'm like, that piece isn't in the show, but I'm like, "Yeah, oh my God, tell me about that." It's just such inspiring stories, like happy stories, sad stories, everything in between. But it does make you go, like, dang, like all the things we're capable of.
Hey, we're just doing a little bit of an ad break to let you know that the Carrying Stones project is still happening. It takes place in the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts, 1 Museum Drive, Montgomery, Alabama. It takes place from now till January 11th, open from Tuesday to Sunday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So, yeah, don't miss out. It's free. You get to see the wonderful work and the wonderful commentary that Roses puts on for this show. For this exhibit, it's free. You can just walk on in there. Well, you have to take a survey, but then after that, you can just walk on in there and see the beautiful work that she has displayed. Okay, that's my little ad thing, my little free ad that I'm doing. Now let's get back to the show. And so with the subjects and subjects representing sort of like the bigger problems, what drew you to academia?
Oh, the requests, sheer volume of requests, unfortunately. Um, I, as an artist, do a number of like residencies, where you go off and you work like in an artist colony for a while. And there's a lot of academics at those. And every academic that I know who, when they find out what my project is about, they're like, you have to do women in academia. It's a mess. You have no idea. So yeah, sheer number of requests on that one.
And then there was also a subject that I thought was very interesting, and it was about COVID. And I was just wondering if you can get a little spill about like sort of like how COVID sort of played into this,
Yeah,
or just
so
those
the
topics.
COVID piece is about a woman called Anne, and as you will recall seeing, instead of having like gold for paid and silver for unpaid, hers were all silver all the time because, as you recall, we were all stuck home. She was stuck home in a San Francisco apartment with her husband and two children, And she had been just ready to go back into the workforce, like just ready. Her youngest was just old enough to go to preschool. And so she was like, this is it. It's on. COVID came. It nothing, didn't happen. Um, and so she found herself 24/7, like grinding in the home, stuck inside. We remember what it was like. And luckily, she has a great partner. Her husband was working, but he was working from home, locked in the bedroom, so the kids weren't making noise on the Zoom and doing his thing, which left all of the rest to her. And well, that's not a systemic problem in and of itself. I mean, that's just the way it shook out for their family. Um, it does let us talk about the major systemic problem that it was in COVID. So it's like you would think, right? Women are doing a certain amount and men are doing a certain amount less statistically. And you would think that that would just like go up as everybody's stuck home, but it didn't. Men increased their unpaid labor like this much, and women increased it like 65% or some crazy percentage. Um, so when when we were faced with that position where all labor had turned domestic, except for the very little you could eke out if you could do it on your Zoom, women took a grossly disproportionate share of it.
That is something I remember just like watching that as well. And there was another piece in there that I really liked that I just now remembered. It was Rachel and how you constructed it. And this is something, I mean, this probably isn't what you intended. And I mean, if you, I definitely would give you the floor to talk a little bit about Rachel as well to just fill in the audience. But how constructed it was also she was in it as well, like the picture. And just now clocking it was like, oh, her being like sort of in the middle, like kind of almost trapped-ish, like in her
Ish,
work,
yeah.
like in her work, in unpaid work.
You're
And
not missing a beat. That's
okay.
exactly what I intended.
I remember just looking at it, it's like, but in the picture, she also looked kind of like free-ish as well as like the sunlight beaming on her.
Blissed out. But that's who she is. I always try to get myself out of the way as much as possible, to not make it about me, to make it as much about this woman as possible. And that's just who she was. That was her energy. It was like she was like you could trap her in this box, in this like jail of her work and her life. Um, but she took it in stride, man. She's a happy person. She's just all smiles and laughs and um just has a real like grounded feeling to her. So when I saw that picture, among all the selects we were looking at, I was like, "Oh, that's," and I kept coming back to it because it was weird. She had her eyes closed and was like, and I kept coming back to it and coming back to it and was like, that's her. That is her. So actually about that photograph, it's really exciting. It's the first time that I ever have partnered with anybody on any of the pieces in this project is my 18-year-old son Brady, who's a photographer, and he's the one who took that picture.
Oh, lovely.
All of the photographs are like photo composites. There's like 20, 30 layers of me doing stuff to it, but the original photo is his and he's credited on the wall and everything. So that was really, really fun for me to have him at the photo shoot, to have him telling mom to get out of the way. Get out of the way. I'm trying to take a shot, mom. It was really great. But back to Rachel. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a cage, it's a little bit of a jail, but it's open on the top and it's airy, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
it's a little here and a little there. It also, if you noticed, it's smaller on the bottom and it goes bigger as it goes to the top. I wanted it to feel like, a little wobbly balance. She's a very organized person, so that's why she has a geometric arrangement. Whereas like Amira, the entrepreneur, hers is very organic because her life, she's not a very rigid person. She's all about kind of like flow. But Rachel is very organized, so her piece is very organized. Um, but yeah, you definitely got what I was putting out there.
What I, there was something, I also know that your studio was in your house as well. It's in your house
Yeah,
and
it's outside.
out outside. And what I guess what I really enjoyed about it as well is the fact that you built it yourself. And I just had some experiences in stagecraft and whatnot of just like the joy it is to really craft something yourself. So I guess I just would love to like if you could tell me a little bit about your experiences of really like building these by hand and just really like what was some of the joy or some of the insights or some of the things that you found while building these sculptures.
Oh, yeah, I love the building and I hate the building. It's crazy making and it's awesome. It's the best part. All of it. So for example, the Rachel piece, which is the piece I built this last summer, I started in May, because that's when it quits raining here usually. In Northern California, this is important information. It quits raining in the spring and it doesn't rain all summer. So you can put everything outside. It doesn't start raining until like October. So you pretty much guaranteed to, like all your stuff isn't going to get wet, right? So in May, I buy all this lumber and I dry it and it's all over the yard. It's just like our yard is lovely until mom gets working. And then all of a sudden, every surface is covered with my crap. Um, and I'm, sometimes apologizing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry my mess is everywhere. And the whole family's used to it. My husband's a filmmaker too. Like he gets creative process. His just isn't as messy. Um, so yeah, they all get it and they're all used to me having my stuff everywhere. Um, but like, all the pieces I make are really big and they take a really long time to make. So it's while it looks like chaos outside, I actually have like all these like really anal work schedules of like I need to do 12 pieces a day and like skipping the weekends and then I'll have this stage done 12 days or whatever. Um and so yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of like computer schematics. Like it all looks very like I hope it all looks very like sort of, handmade and whatever, and it is, but like behind all the handmade, there's schematics, data sheets that like tell me which piece goes where. And then I have to like have those spreadsheets with me every time I install them so I know which piece goes on which thing. So it's like it's funny because they're like kind of, on the rustic side visually, aesthetically, but like the building of them is actually really technical.
And I guess I want to know a bit is why gold and silver? I mean, there could, yeah, why gold and silver?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty basic actually. It's gold, like you got paid,
Yeah.
silver, less value. Women's unpaid labor is not accorded as much status
Mm.
in society as paid labor or as men's unpaid labor. So I'm just speaking to like just in a basic way to the value that society ascribes to that labor.
Which is definitely something that I mean immediately comes through as well. Of just like remember just after I was like, okay, yeah, gold, paid work,
Gold.
silver, yeah,
Yep, silver, less, right.
yeah.
Not everything can be complicated. Otherwise, it would like, it's already a lot to absorb with like, I'm telling you a story and showing you this woman and you're learning a thing. Some things have to be obvious.
Yeah. And just like that educator side of you, I feel like really shows. And I just, yeah, it just shows greatly. And I mean, I know you get asked this a lot of just like, oh, have you done your like time in your hours and such? So I'm gonna try not to ask that. Instead,
Yeah, ask whatever you want.
I would love to just ask more of just, have you ever thought of what your sculpture would be?
Yeah, people do love to ask this question. In that first big piece that I said it was like 47 women, I did run my data for that. It was at the very, very start of the project. So I was just one of like this conglomeration of different women doing it. Um, and it was interesting, but like at that point, the kids were still really young. I knew. It's why I started the project. I knew kind of what I was doing. Now that the kids are older, I haven't looked at my data. I know I do a lot. I know that I'm much better about not doing so much anymore. I kind of take it more in phases. And, I mean, yeah, I'm still a graphic designer. I still do that work. Girls got to pay the bills. So it's like sometimes I'm like more focused on that. Sometimes I'm outside building things. But I think I've gotten better at saying no, for sure. I think I've gotten better at whittling down the things that I'm volunteering to do that really mean something to me or will really move the needle for my career. I used to just like do any old thing that might help my career. Sure, sure, I'll do it for you. And maybe I'll get an opportunity. And I've learned over time, some things are worth it, some things are not. With the kids, yeah, it's like they take so much time when they're little, and now that they're older, they still like fill up the same amount of brain space. You're just not like as hands-on, but you're still like in there worrying about them, doing for them, whatever. So I wouldn't say the kid stuff has changed a lot.
There was when you're talk there was a I had a reminder about like I was sitting here in this one interview and I was just like talking, like talking about myself, talking about my work experience. And then they sort of shifted and they were just like, okay, so what do you do for hobbies? Like, what do you do? And I'm just sitting here just like, I I I don't know. It's like, because I mean, it made me realize about the idea of like, okay, when I'm not working, I'm sitting around thinking about work, thinking about like, oh, okay, like what more jobs can I have? Or because someone who's like recently graduated, I'm constantly like, okay, I need to find a full-time job. Okay, I need to find a job that's like in my career. Or okay, I need to like this constant feeling of like, okay, I'm not where I'm supposed to be right now. I need to find a way to like keep going. And I guess just sort of that interview in this interview as well, it was just like the idea of like trying to live a full life and a life that is not just about like, oh, work or trying to find work, but just like, oh, spend time with family or like relaxing or, just something like that. So that's definitely something that this exhibit sort of brought up as well. And that's something that I have to like constantly like try to work out of like, oh, I need to like talk to someone. I need to like talk to my friend. Like, why I'm just sitting here by myself, just imagining what my life could be like in like 20 years.
I know. And it's funny you bring up the hobby thing. Like, yeah, I can't hobby. I don't know how to hobby. It's like always going to become like I learned to crochet because my younger kid was learning to crochet and I kept having to fix it. And I was like, wait, this is kind of fun. But I can never just leave it there. It's like, okay, well, what if I made this big giant crochet? Like it always turns into something like, okay, and then I'll make like a dozen of them and they'll fill a room. It's like slow, slow. So lately I've just been trying to sit down and read a book, like a
Mm.
book that is not related to work, a book that does not inform me on anything that I'm thinking about, just a story. Um, and that has been going moderately well.
What's your favorite book?
What's my favorite book?
Mhm.
No
Or
idea.
what's the book you've been reading most
The book I
recently?
just read was Cloud Atlas, and it was
Oh,
wonderful.
oh, what was that about? If you don't mind.
That is hard to say what that is about. It is a book. My husband read it and was like, "This will blow your mind," and
Mm,
gave it to me. It's a bunch of vignettes from different characters through time, but then you realize that they're all connected through time. It's hard to explain what it's about. And it goes like all the way out into the future and then it comes back. And it was fascinating.
mm.
And it took me right out of like it had nothing to do with anything in my normal existence, and I loved it.
The last I I was like on a reading streak, I felt like, but then I just got cut off because then it's like, oh, work, oh, and doing all this other stuff. But the last thing I've read, it was a script, and it was called Constellations by Nick Payne, I believe his name was. And it was sort of just the whole premise of it is like the idea of like the multiverse, but it
Cool.
explores with like this couple, and it's like each scene is sort of like a mesh of like these couples, but if they made a different choice.
Oh, I love that.
And it's
Yeah.
like each one's like, oh, they're married. Oh, they're not married. Oh, they're divorced. And it's like all because like, oh, a simple choice. Even like sometimes like a simple choice of like, oh, he comes up and says hey to her. Oh, they end up not speaking. And now they're just like not talking to each other. And on one, I think I really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed the idea more than like what how it unfolded, but it's definitely like I think it would
Mhm.
definitely be interesting to see on stage.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, the book I just explained to you could definitely be seen as like a multiverse thing too. So
Hmm.
maybe you should check it out.
All right,
We're
I'm writing it
definitely
down.
like having similar moments in our reading.
Hmm. And sort of my last question, I guess, is like, are you still like going through, are you still adding more sculptures and such to the Carrying Stones project?
Yeah, it's ongoing for sure. The
Oh.
next one that was another one that was like requested over and over and over and over is single motherhood.
Hmm.
Which both you and I can speak to.
Yeah.
That has been requested so many times. So I already have the data from a very interesting woman from London. She's my first non-American.
Hmm.
Um, and she has real interesting work story. She also like works with adoption. So like that's going to be an interesting angle. I don't know how like if or how I can like work that in as well. Or maybe I just do a whole nother piece about adoption and everything that comes with that. But I'm really excited to do single parenting. Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Hmm. Could you give us like a little bit of a tease or a little bit of like some of the things that you found while researching about single motherhood and some of your own reflections?
Yeah, I could tease it, but I don't think I'm going to tell you anything that is
That's
going to
a
surprise you, unfortunately. It's, like constant grind and like constant, like, needing to, like, there's a lot of time spent on logistics of like, if the kid is younger or in this case, has developmental disabilities. How do you got to go to work? What are you going to do? And so there's a lot of time spent on logistics of like because you're the only grown up there. So how are you going to make it all fit? Who's going to help you? Who's your village? How are they available? Um, and also like just like a lot of money spent as well. It's a very costly endeavor to do it by yourself because you have to have help. And that help doesn't come prepackaged for free as a partner.
Oh yeah. This reminded me of a one story is where it's like I was like really young, had to go, get picked up by the bus. I remember because my mom had to get up so early, it's like I wasn't at that age where she would necessarily like, oh yeah, just leave him at the house by himself and
Yeah.
just wait for the bus. What she would do, this is always, I used to hate it when she had to go work because that means I knew it's like, oh man, I have to get up so early. And then I gotta like hop in the car with my mom. Then I gotta go all the way to my grandma's house. Then she has to drop me off there. And then so I won't be alone. And then the bus will pick me up from there. And then it's like I have to get up like at around like 5 in the morning just to get picked up.
hmm
And I'm just
I
like,
know my
oh.
brother had to catch a bus, and I had like the second I turned 16, my mom was like, "Here's the keys. Get him to the bus at 7 a.m." So we were out of the house at 6:30 in the morning, up at 6 because he had to be where he was going, and then we had like the other car that didn't work so well, and if that car wasn't working that day, then it was like I had to take my brother and then I had to take my mom to work, and then I had to go back
Mm,
to school. Yeah. So
yeah,
there's a
but
lot, there's just a lot of time spent on logistics. Kids are part of that, but I don't, you don't understand until you're older how like stressful that must have been for her to organize. And you're just
but
in the back bitching about it.
if you want to keep up to date with the podcast or get connected, follow me on Instagram and check out some of the other episodes and hear their stories on What We Share.